Leo was 24 years old with dark wavy hair that brushed just above his shoulders and a lean frame that made him look taller than his actual height. His eyes were a soft gray, often reflecting the subdued hope he carried for his music career. He was a guitarist and songwriter, juggling part-time jobs to stay afloat in a busy city that rarely seemed interested in nurturing artists. Despite these challenges, he held on to his ambitions, even when it felt like the world was speeding ahead without him. Isabel, 1 year older, had known Leo since they were teenagers. Their friendship had formed during high school art class, where her doodles had exploded into vibrant canvases and his notebook sketches of music chords had evolved into actual compositions. Now she was living in a shared studio, devoting herself full-time to painting. She was self-assured in a quiet, observational way. Her hair, dyed in a moody auburn shade, was usually tied back in a loose ponytail, paintbrushes often tucked behind her ear. Over the years, Leo had come to admire her dedication. No matter how uncertain her path looked, she poured every ounce of creativity into her work. One humid afternoon, they met at a cafe near Isabel's tiny studio. The smell of roasted coffee beans mingled with the summer air that drifted in through the open windows. Isabel arrived in a loose-fitting linen shirt, flecks of paint still clinging to her skin. Leo watched her weave through the tables until she reached him, a purposeful look in her eyes. "Hey," she said, sliding into the chair across from him. "Thanks for meeting me on such short notice." Leo shrugged, swirling the last of his iced coffee. "No worries. I was just practicing some chords at home. You sounded excited on the phone." Isabel exhaled, resting her forearms on the table. "I've been working on a new painting series. It's a bit different from anything I've done before." She paused, waiting to see how Leo might react. It focuses on androgyny, how clothing and makeup can shift people's perceptions, how it can blur boundaries. Leo lifted an eyebrow. "That's a pretty cool concept. I know you've always liked exploring identities in your art. What's the plan this time?" She drummed her fingers on the table, then looked at him squarely. "I need a model. Specifically, I want someone who's open enough to try different outfits, different styles, to help me bring out the fluid nature I'm trying to capture. And I was hoping you might be up for it." He let out a soft laugh, surprised. "Me? You want me to model? I'm not exactly runway material." She shook her head, a slight smile playing at her lips. "You're perfect for it. We trust each other, and I need someone willing to step outside their comfort zone." She paused, then reached for his hand. "I know it might feel awkward, but I really think you'd be amazing, and I promise it's purely artistic." Leo stared at his half-empty cup. The notion unsettled him in a strange way. He liked the idea of being part of Isabel's creative process. Her success mattered to him. But stepping into a role where he'd be posed, potentially dressed in clothing that didn't align with his usual style, made him uncertain. Yet he recognized a spark of curiosity flickering beneath that hesitation. "How many sessions would it be?" he asked. "Probably several. I'll need reference sketches, photographs, multiple sittings where you might wear different outfits, some masculine, some more feminine, and some in between." He took a moment to consider her words. "I'm not opposed. It's just this isn't something I've done before." Her eyes brightened. "I get it. It's definitely not everyone's idea of a comfortable project, but that tension, that slight sense of unfamiliar territory, is what the art needs." He leaned back, crossing his arms. "You sure you want me?" "Yes," she replied firmly. "It wouldn't work with just anybody. If I'm going to push boundaries, I need someone I trust." An odd sense of flattery welled up in him. He nodded slowly. "All right, I'm in. Just be patient with me, okay?" She grinned. "Of course. We'll figure it out together." They chatted a bit more, finalizing the day for their first session. Isabel insisted that he come to her studio the following week so she could plan the initial sketch. Leo felt a swirl of anticipation and unease. He glanced at his guitar bag, leaning against the chair, wondering if he'd just agreed to something that might change the way he saw himself. A week later, Leo climbed the narrow staircase leading to Isabel's studio. Dust motes floated in the sunlight seeping through the tall windows. The building was old, full of cramped artist spaces, each door decorated with the occupant's unique style. Isabel's door was painted a vivid swirl of colors, magenta, gold, turquoise, that mirrored her vibrant way of seeing the world. She opened the door before he could knock. "Come in," she said, ushering him inside. Her studio was spacious, though cluttered with canvases and paint supplies. The walls were lined with half-finished paintings. One in particular caught his eye, a figure standing in profile, half-draped in a feminine dress, while the other side was tailored in a crisp men's suit jacket. He swallowed, feeling a flicker of nerves. This was what he'd signed up for. Isabel pointed to a stool in the center of the room. "Let's start simple. We'll do a traditional portrait. No makeup, no costume changes. I just want to capture your natural aura, how you hold yourself." He nodded, setting his guitar case aside in a corner. Even in everyday clothes, a basic t-shirt and jeans, he felt self-conscious. He removed his shoes to avoid tracking dust on the studio floor. Stepping onto the stool, he tried to relax his shoulders, though tension still sang through his muscles. Isabel took her time with the initial sketch, using soft charcoal to outline his figure. She mumbled occasionally things like, "Chin up a bit," or "turn slightly this way," but mostly she observed in silence. Despite her calm demeanor, Leo felt every shift. After half an hour, she told him to take a break. He hopped down, shaking out his arms. "Is there a plan for how we'll jump into the more?" He searched for the right phrase. "The more fluid part of this?" Isabel nodded. "I'll introduce that gradually. Some sessions will emphasize subtle changes, maybe a light dusting of makeup or a certain accessory. Then we'll build up to bigger transformations." She gestured toward a rolling rack of clothes near the window. Leo hadn't noticed it at first. On it hung an array of garments, dresses with sleek lines, baggy trousers, tailored shirts, flowing scarves. Everything looked carefully chosen. "These outfits belong to me or were borrowed from friends," she explained. "Some I thrifted specifically for this project. I want a range that can be mixed and matched, so each look has an element of surprise." Leo looked at the clothes, his stomach fluttering with both curiosity and apprehension.
"Right.
"So, we'll be exploring all of these." She laughed softly, placing her charcoal aside. "Not all at once. I won't throw you into something completely foreign without warning." They resumed the portrait session, and Leo found himself loosening up. Isabel had a gentle yet methodical way of guiding him, making him forget, at least for a few moments, his initial reluctance. By the time they wrapped up for the day, Leo's nerves had lessened, replaced by a contemplative intrigue. The second time he came to her studio, the atmosphere was different. The easel was set aside, and instead Isabel had arranged soft lighting near the seating area. A half-body mirror stood beside a small cart of makeup items. She was wearing paint-splattered jeans and a loose sweater, but there was a focused energy to her movements. "Today," she announced, "we're going to try something slightly more adventurous. I have a couple of outfits laid out. One is distinctly masculine, just a fitted black shirt and some sleek trousers. The other is more feminine, a simple slip dress I layered with a loose cardigan." Leo's heart picked up its pace. "Both in the same session?"
"Yes."
"Let's start with the masculine look. I want to see the contrast when you switch to the dress later." She paused, meeting his gaze. "If anything feels too strange, tell me. We'll figure out a way to make it more comfortable." He nodded, clearing his throat. "All right, where should I change?" She directed him behind a folding screen in the corner. The black shirt clung to him in a way his regular t-shirts never did, and the slim trousers felt snug around his legs. He emerged, feeling as though he was attending a formal event. Isabel walked around him, lightly tugging the fabric into place. "This emphasizes your angles, your shoulders, and jawline. Just stand by the mirror. I'll do a quick sketch and take a few reference photos." He complied, trying to ignore the slight heat in his cheeks. She snapped photos, the camera clicking in the quiet studio. Then she switched to pencil and paper, rendering quick sketches. This part, though mildly uncomfortable, felt manageable, an extension of the portrait session. Then came the next outfit. Isabel held out the slip dress, a soft gray color with thin straps. Leo hesitated. She caught his expression and said in a gentle tone, "You don't have to wear it if it's too much, but I'd like to see the effect." He forced a smile, determined to stick to his commitment. "No, I'll try." Behind the folding screen, he changed into the garment. The material was cool against his skin, the shape flowing straight down without fitting tightly. He put on the cardigan and studied himself in the mirror. It was surreal. His reflection looked vulnerable, different, yet there was something oddly intriguing about the contrast. Stepping out, he noticed his arms felt more exposed. He folded them over his chest, but quickly dropped them when he realized how tense he looked. Isabel circled him, eyes thoughtful. "You look good," she said quietly. "And the idea isn't to make you appear hyperfeminine. It's to show how the human form can inhabit these different styles." He took a breath, letting her position him in front of the mirror. The slight smell of paint mixed with her subtle perfume. As she adjusted a strap, he noticed how quietly serious she was, fully immersed in her creative vision. That focus quelled some of his nerves. They spent the next hour discussing how clothing could alter a person's bearing and how the slip dress brought out a gentler, more introspective poise in his stance. In the middle of the session, Isabel asked, "Can I add some eyeliner?" "Just a bit. I want to see how it shifts your features." Leo shrugged. "Sure." He found it strange to have someone applying makeup to his face, the cool glide of the pencil, the brush of her fingertips near his cheek, but her touch was careful, and her encouragement helped keep him calm. When he finally glimpsed himself in the mirror with the dress and the subtle liner, he felt a ripple of fascination. It wasn't a look he'd ever imagined himself wearing, yet he didn't hate it. In fact, he found something mesmerizing about the way it softened his expression without completely erasing his usual features. Isabel observed him carefully. "How does it feel?" He gave a half-smile. "Different. Not bad, just different." They wrapped up that session with more sketches and photos. At the end of it, Leo felt a strange buzz. He left the studio in his usual clothes, but his mind lingered on the reflection he'd seen moments earlier. In the days that followed, Leo noticed his thoughts drifting to those sessions. While practicing a new melody on his guitar at home, he'd catch himself recalling the line of the slip dress on his frame, or the eyeliner accentuating his eyes. Part of him was embarrassed by how intrigued he felt. Another part recognized that he simply couldn't ignore the stirring sense of possibility it awakened. He began to look forward to Isabel's calls or messages, each one setting the date for the next session. She in turn sensed his growing willingness. The third session introduced subtle lipstick shades and a partial updo of his hair. The fourth session involved a more daring outfit, wide-legged trousers paired with a feminine blouse that had ruffles at the collar. Each time he'd stand in front of the mirror and see himself from a fresh perspective. All the while, a tender undercurrent ran between them. They were longtime friends. But something about these intimate sessions, her hands smoothing out wrinkles in the fabric near his waist or gently blotting lipstick on his lips, led to small moments where their eyes met and lingered. They never verbalized it outright, but there was a palpable feeling building behind the conversations about art and style. One warm evening, after a particularly long session, Isabel invited Leo to stay for dinner. She cleared space on a cluttered table, pushing brushes and palettes aside, and served homemade pasta. The overhead light cast a soft glow over their tired faces. Between bites, Leo asked, "So, how's the painting series going? Any progress on the final pieces?" She twirled her fork in her bowl. "I've done preliminary work on a few canvases. But the real challenge is capturing the essence. There's more at play than just clothes and makeup. It's how you inhabit those outfits, the energy you bring." He brushed a stray curl off his forehead. "I've been trying not to overthink how I stand or move, but it's hard. I catch myself feeling awkward." Isabel nodded. "It's natural. You're opening up to a new dimension of style, but that's what makes it compelling." She paused. "Do you ever try this on your own at home or anywhere else?" Heat rushed to his cheeks, and he momentarily diverted his gaze. He cleared his throat once or twice. "I thought about it. I actually tried on a blouse you gave me to take home after we finished the last session. You told me to keep it for reference. It felt strange and kind of interesting at the same time." Her lips curved into a gentle smile. I'm glad you're exploring it. That's part of why I wanted you as a model, to see how someone might adapt when given permission to cross these usual boundaries. He nodded slowly, swirling his spoon in his nearly empty bowl. I don't know what to make of it yet, but I can't deny there's something compelling about it all. They fell silent for a moment. Through the open window, distant traffic hummed. Isabel reached across the table, placing her hand over his. I appreciate you trusting me with this project. It means a lot. Leo felt a shiver at her touch, a warmth blossoming in his chest. It's helped me see myself differently, he admitted quietly. She withdrew her hand, carefully collecting the dishes. We'll keep working. There's a lot more to explore. That night, as Leo lay in bed, he couldn't sleep. His thoughts spun with images of himself in the various outfits, of Isabel's watchful gaze. He wondered if his curiosity might be tangled up with his attraction to her. He'd always found her appealing, her intelligence, her creativity, her calm determination. But these modeling sessions created a new level of intimacy, one that blurred lines of friendship and the playful role of muse and artist. The next afternoon, he found himself with some free time and decided to test an idea. He rummaged through his closet until he found the blouse Isabel had given him. It was a soft cotton piece, off-white, with gentle lace detailing near the collar. He slipped it on, feeling the cloth settle around his torso. Standing before his full-length mirror, he tried to remain neutral in his stance, feet set slightly apart, shoulders back, arms at his sides. He wanted to see if any sense of ease would wash over him, or if the discomfort would be overwhelming. What he felt was a flutter of adrenaline and a calm he couldn't quite categorize. He turned this way and that, noticing how the fabric draped differently from his usual t-shirts. He tried rolling up the sleeves to see how it looked with his arms exposed. A strand of hair fell across his face, and he tucked it behind his ear. The reflection in the mirror was undeniably him, yet changed in a subtle, intriguing way. His phone buzzed. Breaking from his thoughts, he saw it was Isabel sending a reminder about the next session. He looked again at his reflection, his heart pounding. Instead of peeling off the blouse, he made a bold decision. He grabbed his guitar from its stand and began playing a quiet tune, letting the notes resonate in the small room. The gentle strum of chords felt soothing. He realized it had been ages since he'd played, without feeling pressured to rehearse or write. There was a sense of relief, a small but potent moment of comfort in the unfamiliar garment. When the next session rolled around, Leo arrived with a new level of eagerness. Isabel noticed right away. She was mixing paints in shallow trays, her expression brightening when she caught sight of him. "Ready?" she asked, gesturing toward the stool. Today she had set up a large canvas, and behind her lay an array of new fabrics. He nodded, more ready than ever. She gave him a searching look. Any reason for the shift in confidence? He paused, deciding how much to reveal. Finally, he offered a small smile. I tried out that blouse at home, played my guitar in it for a while. It felt honestly okay. Isabel's eyes lit up, and she nodded, as though this confirmed something she'd long suspected. That's exactly what I was hoping for. I want you to feel that you're not just putting on a costume for me. You're exploring different styles and letting it become part of your own world. He felt a flush of warmth at her words, then let her guide him to the stool. Today's outfit was a bit more dramatic, a fitted vest over a flowing button-down shirt that had wide sleeves, paired with slim jeans. Isabel had also laid out a skirt, but she said they would get to that later. She handed him an eyeshadow palette. I'd like you to do this part. Pick a shade that feels right. Just dab a bit on your lids. He swallowed. I don't know anything about how to apply this. She laughed lightly. Just experiment. It's not about perfection. It's about playing with the idea. He dipped the small brush into a neutral tone, carefully sweeping it across his eyelids. Each flick of the brush made his heart pound. It felt like he was crossing an invisible line, yet there was something exhilarating about it. When he was done, Isabel examined his face with keen attention. Not bad, she said softly. Let's add a little more around the corners. She stepped forward and gently blended the edges with her fingertips. The warmth of her skin against his temple caused a shiver of awareness. They were standing close enough that he could see the faint freckles on her cheeks. "Look at you," she teased, stepping back. "You're a natural." He chuckled nervously, but appreciated her light-hearted tone. "It's kind of fun," he admitted, surprising himself with the statement. They spent the next hour going through poses, Isabel taking photos, and occasionally painting quick strokes on the canvas. She'd motion for him to tilt his chin or shift his stance. Sometimes she'd say, "Close your eyes. Let your head drop," capturing a thoughtful moment. Other times she asked him to stare directly into the camera. Leo was finding a new confidence in front of her lens, a comfort with the unfamiliar shapes and textures of the clothing. Halfway through, she asked him to try on the skirt. He stepped behind the screen, swapping out the jeans. The skirt had a bold asymmetrical cut that fell to his calf on one side and rose above the knee on the other. He hesitated before stepping out, but the look of awe on Isabel's face when she saw him made his apprehension fade. "Beautiful," she said simply. "Hold that thought." She guided him to stand near a large window where light streamed in. The warm glow illuminated the soft fabric of the skirt. Isabel began sketching rapidly, occasionally pausing to snap a photo on her phone. A comfortable silence surrounded them, broken only by her pencil scraping the paper and the soft hum of traffic from the street below. When the session wrapped up, Leo felt both exhausted and invigorated. Isabel set down her pencil, wiping a stray spot of charcoal from her cheek. "We made real progress today," she said with a contented sigh. He nodded. "Yeah, I feel like every session there's something new I learn about." He caught himself carefully avoiding the words he found too big or too revealing. "About style," he finished lamely. She studied him for a long moment, her gaze direct. "I'm glad." A few weeks passed in this pattern. Each session introduced new elements. Bolder makeup, accessories like necklaces or hats, footwear ranging from rugged boots to slim loafers. Isabel captured everything in photographs, sketches, and experimental brushstrokes on canvas. Meanwhile, Leo discovered a growing fascination with these transformations. Outside of the studio, he kept up with his music gigs, filling in at bars and cafes, but a shift had taken root in him. An undercurrent of excitement stirred whenever he remembered what he'd done in Isabel's space. One night, after a small performance at a local cafe, Leo came home energized by the audience's reaction to his music. He shut his apartment door, set his guitar aside, and glanced at the garment bag he'd brought back from Isabel's last session. Something in him clicked, and he decided to try one of the more neutral ensembles again, a soft cardigan and tailored pants with slight flare at the bottom. Standing in front of his mirror, he pushed his hair back with a headband. It wasn't quite the same as being at Isabel's studio, but it brought back that rush of curiosity. This time, he did something impulsive. He grabbed his phone and took a selfie in the mirror. He hardly recognized the self-assured tilt of his chin, the relaxed alignment of his posture. Without overthinking, he sent the picture to Isabel with a simple caption, "Thoughts." He almost regretted it immediately, but within moments, a message chimed in. "Wow, that is amazing," she wrote. "You look confident. This is exactly the vibe we've been aiming for." He felt a small surge of pride at her response. With time, the sessions at Isabel's studio became a routine part of Leo's life. Yet, beneath this steady rhythm, there was an unspoken tension. Their closeness had always been rooted in friendship, but now it felt ripe for something more. The shifts in attire sometimes made him feel vulnerable, and that vulnerability seemed to spark deeper emotions whenever Isabel looked at him with admiration. One afternoon, he mustered the courage to broach the subject. They were standing near the sink, washing paintbrushes after a session. The corners of the studio were stacked with freshly primed canvases. Leo's reflection in the mirror above the sink showed the faint remnants of makeup around his eyes. "Isabel," he began, trying to phrase his thoughts carefully. "I wanted to ask you something." She glanced at him, water dripping from the brushes in her hands. "Sure, what's up?" He took a breath. "These sessions, they're obviously meaningful from an artistic standpoint, but do you ever feel like there's something else going on between us?" She arched an eyebrow, placing the brushes to dry. Her gaze flickered with caution. I'd be lying if I said I hadn't felt anything beyond just artist and model. But I also don't want to jeopardize our friendship or the project we're working on. He nodded, heart thumping. I care a lot about you. It's not just about the painting. He struggled to find words that wouldn't alarm her. I feel close to you in a way that's more than before. She studied his face. I feel the same. There are moments when I catch myself watching you, thinking about you in ways that have little to do with paint or clothes. He swallowed, the tension in the small space almost tangible. But I don't want to mess up your series. It means so much to you. Isabel shook her head. I know it's delicate, but maybe we can be honest about it and see where that takes us. If it risks complicating things, we'll address it as it comes. They remained in silence for a moment, the sound of dripping water the only noise. Then Isabel stepped closer, placing a hand on Leo's shoulder. Let's not rush. We can keep creating this art together. Keep discovering what we're discovering. The rest we'll handle carefully. He managed a quiet smile, relief mixing with anticipation. Thank you for hearing me out. She returned the smile, gently squeezing his shoulder. Always. Their conversations over the following weeks were layered with the unspoken acknowledgement of their feelings. Meanwhile, the painting series neared completion. Isabel was planning a small showcase in a local gallery, presenting pieces that captured fluid presentations of gender. She had a half-dozen canvases featuring Leo in various ensembles, some leaning masculine, some leaning feminine, and some existing in that undefined middle space. Each painting emanated a sense of reflection and transformation, an element of possibility that drew the viewer in. Leo was there when she put the finishing touches on one of the largest canvases. It depicted him in a long tunic and loose pants, the background swirling with abstract color. The figure's face was partly turned away, leaving a hint of mystery. Isabel carefully brushed on the final highlights around his hair, stepping back frequently to gauge the effect. He watched her from behind, hands tucked into his pockets. You really captured something here, he said softly. Even I can't quite describe it. She glanced over her shoulder, a satisfied but tired expression on her face. Painting is my way of revealing how I see people, and with you, there's been so much to observe. He approached the canvas, studying the soft merging of shades along the outfit. I can see bits of both traditionally masculine and feminine silhouettes, he mused. And you've blended them in a way that looks harmonious. Isabel leaned her head against his shoulder, her voice quiet. That was the goal. These sessions have shown me how complicated and beautiful it can be when you step outside your usual presentation. He turned his head slightly, breathing in the subtle scent of her hair dye and paint. Has it changed the way you see me? Her arm slipped around his waist, giving a gentle squeeze. It's shown me depths in you I hadn't recognized before, and it's deepened my admiration for you, both as a person and as someone I care about. He returned the side embrace, heart pounding. The knowledge that she had captured him on these canvases for the world to see felt both thrilling and nerve-wracking, but the pride he felt in her artistry overshadowed his nervousness. When the night of the gallery showcase arrived, Leo dressed in an outfit Isabel had helped him piece together. Dark jeans, a silky shirt with subtle lace along the cuffs, and a blazer that gave the ensemble a refined twist. It was understated, but still hinted at the fluid styles they'd explored. Standing in front of his mirror, he tightened a slim belt around his waist, feeling a mixture of excitement and apprehension. This would be the first time he presented himself in public, wearing something that felt connected to the project's experimental spirit. The gallery was already buzzing with art enthusiasts by the time he arrived. Isabel was speaking with a small group near her displayed works, wearing a flowing jumpsuit that accentuated her lean frame. She spotted him at the entrance, and her face lit up with a warm smile. Without hesitation, she crossed the room and looped an arm through his. "You look fantastic," she whispered, her eyes bright. He glanced around, noticing how her paintings drew people in. Each piece showed a different facet of his transformations. Some visitors studied the artwork thoughtfully. Others chatted with Isabel about her inspiration. He found himself fielding curious smiles and nods from strangers. Some recognized him from the paintings, pointing from the canvas to him with a mixture of surprise and admiration. A few approached him politely, praising the artistry and his willingness to be the model. He felt both proud and slightly exposed. After a time, Isabel pulled him aside into a quieter corner near a table of refreshments. "You doing all right?" she asked, checking his expression. He exhaled, adrenaline thrumming in his veins. "Yeah, it's overwhelming, but in a good way." She handed him a glass of sparkling water. "I've never had such a buzz around my work. People are really connecting with the idea of blurred lines in fashion and presentation." He took a sip, watching a group of attendees gather around the largest canvas. "Your execution is brilliant. You managed to capture moments that feel authentic, not staged." She nodded, a glimmer of pride in her eyes. "Thank you for letting me do this. I couldn't have pulled it off without you." At that moment, a bearded man with a press badge around his neck approached them. He introduced himself as an arts writer for a local publication and asked Isabel a series of questions about her vision. Then he turned to Leo. "So, you're the model?" he asked, sounding genuinely intrigued. Leo smiled politely. "Yes, it's been quite an experience." The writer tilted his head. "You don't seem embarrassed about appearing in these more feminine-coded outfits." Leo hesitated. Isabel placed a reassuring hand on his arm. Taking courage from her presence, he replied, "At first it felt unfamiliar, but after working so closely with Isabel, I realized it's just another form of expression. It opened my eyes to a lot of possibilities." The writer nodded appreciatively. "You wear it well. It's impressive to see that confidence in real life." With that, he thanked them and moved on. Isabel gazed at Leo with admiration. "You handled that perfectly." He set down his glass, noticing how warm her hand felt on his arm. "It's easier to be confident when you're around. You've shown me I can embrace these different looks and not be ashamed." She pulled him into a quick hug, leaning up to kiss his cheek. It was a brief, tender moment, but it ignited a spark in him. He fought the urge to pull her closer, aware they were in a public setting. After the showcase ended and the gallery closed its doors for the night, Isabel and Leo lingered among the remnants of the event, scattered pamphlets, empty cups, and faint echoes of voices. The gallery owner had allowed them a private moment to soak in the aftermath. Isabel walked over to a painting of Leo in a partial state of transformation, hair styled in loose waves, minimal but striking makeup, wearing a tuxedo jacket over a flowing skirt. The background was a storm of colors swirling around the figure. She ran her fingertips lightly across the painting's frame. "This one might be my favorite," she murmured. "It shows an in-between stage, strong but also delicate." Leo joined her, placing a hand on the small of her back. "I remember that session. I was so nervous." She smiled. "I was nervous, too. I worried you might decide it was too much." He turned to look at her profile, lit by the gallery's overhead lamps. "I trusted you," he said simply. "I still do." She leaned her forehead against his shoulder, exhaling softly. "I'm grateful." A hush fell between them. The muted glow of the gallery lights cast elongated shadows on the floor. He felt the beating of his heart in the quiet. Slowly, he reached a hand up to tilt her chin, meeting her gaze. Her eyes flickered with vulnerability and warmth. She spoke softly. "If we go forward like this together, we might face scrutiny. Are you prepared for that?" He considered the question, images of the earlier press writer flashing through his mind. "People talk no matter what, and I'd rather face that with you than avoid it alone." Without further hesitation, he closed the distance between them, brushing his lips against hers in a gentle kiss. It wasn't urgent or rushed, but it was filled with the depth of everything they'd felt over the preceding months. Isabel responded in kind, her fingers curling into his hair. They broke apart after a long moment, both breathing unevenly. Her eyes shone with relief and a hint of wonder. "I was hoping that might happen tonight," she admitted, cheeks flushing. He smiled, a million thoughts swirling in his head, none more prominent than how right it felt in this moment. "Me too." From that evening on, their relationship took on new layers. Isabel still worked on finishing touches for any last-minute additions to her series, and Leo continued his music gigs. But now their collaboration extended beyond the studio, weaving affection into the creative process. Sometimes Leo would come over to her place after a late shift at a bar, drop his guitar by the door, and find her in the midst of painting a fresh canvas. He'd slip into an outfit she'd prepared, a pair of loose slacks and an embroidered shirt, or perhaps a soft wrap sweater, and they'd talk quietly while she painted, occasionally pausing to exchange a gentle kiss. Other times, she'd join him at a cafe gig. He'd step off the small stage in an outfit with subtle flourishes that nodded to the fluid aesthetic they'd been exploring, and she'd beam at him from the crowd. Yet not everything was effortless. Some of their friends reacted with surprise, some supportive, others puzzled. When Leo wore eyeliner or a bold accessory in public, he received stares, though many were positive, or at least neutrally curious. He learned to navigate occasional offhand remarks. Isabel, too, navigated questions about her relationship with her model, politely sidestepping prying interrogations. Through it all, they found solace in each other's company and in the knowledge that their creative partnership had blossomed into something real and powerful. One evening, near the end of the gallery's run, they revisited the space to pick up a few of Isabel's pieces that had sold. Walking through the now empty hall, Leo paused at a painting that remained. It was the portrait of him wearing a flowing dress with a masculine blazer, standing against a background of swirling light. The buyer, who had initially shown interest, couldn't finalize payment, so it was still unsold. He studied it closely, recalling the moment Isabel captured that pose. He had been perched on a stool, wearing that long, airy dress and the structured blazer, a hand resting lightly on his knee. There was a sense of quiet poise in the portrait, a mixture of angles and softness that mirrored the internal shift he'd been experiencing. "I love this one," he murmured. Isabel came up behind him, setting a hand lightly on his arm. "So do I. It's one of my favorites, honestly." He glanced at her. "What are your plans for it?" She considered. "If it doesn't sell, I might keep it or gift it to you if you want it." He turned back to the painting, letting a slow breath out. "I'd like to keep it. It represents so much of what we've gone through." A small smile curved her lips. "Then it's yours." They gently took it down from the wall and carried it out together. The night air was cool, and they carefully navigated the sidewalk, making sure not to bump the canvas against passing pedestrians. Back at Isabel's studio, they leaned the painting against a bare wall. Leo stared at it, thinking of the uncertainties he once had and how different he felt now, not in a dramatic or absolute way, but as though a door had opened in his mind. Isabel stepped closer, her gaze steady. "When I first had this idea, I wasn't certain where it would lead us. I just felt the need to challenge what people see when they look at a person." He wrapped an arm around her waist, pulling her close enough that he could feel her heartbeat. "You definitely challenged what I see when I look in the mirror." They shared a gentle kiss, an understanding passing between them. While they couldn't define everything that might lie ahead, how they'd navigate their relationship long-term, or how the world might respond to Leo's evolving style, they knew they had found something worth nurturing. Over the following months, the city's changing seasons marked the progression of their bond. The leaves turned gold and crimson, then fell, leaving skeletal branches against a pale winter sky. Leo landed a few more steady gigs, and Isabel began organizing her next series. Though she continued painting various subjects, she couldn't help returning to the theme of fluid presentation. She and Leo revisited the concept in fresh ways, refining the aesthetic while also allowing their relationship to deepen. At times they'd argue, perhaps over a miscommunication about scheduling or how far to push a particular look, but these disagreements always found resolution when they sat down to talk honestly. Any frustration was dwarfed by the warmth that had grown between them. Little by little, Leo merged aspects of his newly discovered style into his everyday wardrobe. He might wear a bold earring or slip on a pair of slender boots typically marketed for women. He discovered that in certain social circles, people admired the confidence it took, though not everyone accepted it. Still, the sense of possibility remained, and Isabel's unwavering support helped him navigate the difficult moments. Eventually, he displayed the painting he'd chosen in his apartment. It took up a central position on the main wall, greeting him each time he entered. He'd sometimes pause to look at it, remembering the tension in his stomach when Isabel first proposed this project and the unpredictable path that followed. On a quiet winter evening, Isabel visited his place, coming in from the cold with cheeks flushed pink and hands tucked in the pockets of an oversized coat. The aroma of the stew Leo was cooking filled the small living area. She removed her coat, hanging it near the door, and wandered over to the painting. Her gaze softened, and she turned to him. "I always thought it was bold for you to keep that piece here right in the center," she said, a playful note in her voice. He set down the ladle, wiping his hands on a kitchen towel. "Why not? It's a part of who I am now. Or maybe it always was, and we just happened to uncover it." She smiled, stepping closer so she could run a hand gently down the front of his sweater. "I'm proud of you," she said quietly. "You've grown so much." He cupped her cheek in his palm, feeling the softness of her skin. "And I'm proud of you for taking your art in such a brave direction." She tilted her head, leaning into his touch. "Where do you want to go from here?" He inhaled, considering the question in the comforting warmth of his apartment. "I'm not entirely sure, but I do know I want to keep exploring with you." She reached up, placing her hand over his. "That sounds like a pretty good plan." They stood there together, framed by the glow of a single lamp and the painting in the background. Although neither spoke the words, they both recognized the uncharted territory ahead, understanding that it wouldn't always be easy. Yet the quiet excitement in the air reminded them of the trust that had grown from those first awkward modeling sessions, the shared vulnerability, and the sense of wonder that continued to propel them forward. In that small shared moment, they found what they needed: a space to be genuine with each other, a promise that they didn't have to confine themselves to any narrow definition of how they should look or who they should be. Their bond was real, rooted in creativity, mutual respect, and the courage to embrace new experiences. No matter the challenges the world might throw at them, they had found something that gave them a sense of freedom and depth together. Did you like the story? Hit that like button and tell me what you thought in the comments. Do you want to hear more stories? Subscribe and hit the bell. For exclusive content and early access, check out our Patreon. You can find the link in the description, or you can watch any of the videos.